Hey guys, Chris here with the Good Old Gamer. So today we're going to be talking about the RX 5700 GPU. More specifically, we're going to be talking more about the architecture and what AMD has been able to fix with RDNA that really didn't work so well with GCN. Now, instead of doing a full comprehensive review and throwing all of this information into one video, I'm going to be breaking up my impressions of the 5700 into a few different videos. So today specifically, I want to look at, like I said, things that didn't really work so well on the GCN architecture, and the big one that stood out to me is OpenGL. OpenGL performance on GCN is horrid. It's absolutely terrible. Now, a lot of you guys out there are probably thinking, who cares about OpenGL? Nothing's using that here today. Well, not entirely true, but most things will not be using OpenGL moving forward. Vulkan's pretty much replaced that. However, all of your older games, the vast majority of great older titles, do use OpenGL. Now, that's like the entire id Software game engine, so the Quake engine games, id Tech 4, all of those are OpenGL games, and every game based off of those are also OpenGL. And the biggest reason for OpenGL performance today are in the two prime emulators out there, Citra and Cemu. So that's the Wii U emulator and the 3DS emulator. So we're going to be checking that stuff out here today. But starting off with OpenGL performance, what you're seeing here is Wolfenstein: The New Order. This is not an old game. It's based on id Tech 5, and this game is running right now on my RX 580. Settings are just 1080p, high settings. This is a game that I played on a GTX 750 Ti when it came out. And this is the performance that we're getting. This is absolutely pathetic. Now, there are ways to go ahead and tweak the game and get it working, but you have to actually go out there, find executables made by users out there to make this game work properly. Now we're seeing the RX 5700 running the same game at the same settings, and as you guys can see here, we're running much better. Now, I do have the community patch out there that allows for higher frame rate. I set it to 144, so we're not capping that out, but you can see that performance is significantly better than that of the RX 580 in this particular game. And the performance that we're getting straight off the bat with no extra tweaking or anything like that is pretty solid. This is over the 60 FPS cap of the game, so we are immediately seeing a nice jump in performance. Now, this is nowhere near on the level of where Nvidia is, but we'll touch on that here in just a little bit. So after I test out Wolfenstein with its encouraging OpenGL performance, I'm like, all right, let's go for it. Let's try Cemu. So I decided to start with Mario Kart 8 on the Cemu emulator, and it ran just fine. It worked really well. Of course, there's a little bit of hitches and stuff in there, but that's part of the emulator. This is actually only the second run with this configuration, so if you've used the emulator, you know you do have to build up shaders over time. But the performance here is on par with anything that I've used with Nvidia, so I was actually really impressed by this. Now, finally, I did try the Citra emulator because on my RX 580, it was a slideshow. It'd run at like 5 frames per second. It was absolutely horrible. And you are now looking at Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time 3D, and it runs good, runs really well, absolutely perfectly. So this was actually a major surprise to me because of how poor the OpenGL performance has been on GCN. Now, for you guys out there that are big into emulation, this is really great news because beforehand, you had to buy an Nvidia card. If you wanted to use those emulators, you simply couldn't use GCN. It just didn't work. It wasn't possible. Now you have the option, especially in the living room, with FreeSync TVs being available and only AMD providing the ability to utilize that FreeSync, you can now use your emulation. So you were really kind of stuck, chicken or the egg kind of situation because you have all these features available, but you couldn't find the right combination to make them work. Now with RDNA and the Navi GPUs, you can get everything and have it working just fine. So that's really awesome. Now, as I mentioned, OpenGL is going away, so we don't need performance to be out of this world. It just needs to be good enough. Now, on older titles like, Quake 3 engine games, even the GCN cards could push through. It basically brute forced its way in, and that worked okay. But on the more modern stuff like Wolfenstein: The New Order and in these newer emulators, it just couldn't hack it. Now with RDNA, it can. So that's really good. However, Nvidia's OpenGL performance is still superior. If for whatever reason you need more performance in OpenGL, you will still need to go with Nvidia. But like I said, since there's not going to be any new games or anything really using that, they'll use Vulkan instead. It's not going to be too big of an issue because everything that you really need to run OpenGL, RDNA can do it, and it does it well enough. So overall, I think it's a good enough increase to where it gets OpenGL performance where it needs to be for the vast majority of users. So I'm really happy to see that. But if you do need more, you will have to go with Nvidia and any trade-offs that may come with. Now, speaking of OpenGL, Relive still does not work. And this is a real problem for somebody like me who plays a lot of older games, also has a YouTube channel, and would like to capture footage, because I cannot use AMD's Relive software to record footage. The only way that I can record footage is using an HDMI capture, which then eliminates FreeSync, which makes my game experience worse, which means I don't want to play it as much. So it's kind of like this big circle here of issues. So this part is for AMD. You have to get OpenGL games working with Relive. You need to be able to capture that stuff. You need to have all of your features working in there. FreeSync, I'm not even entirely sure works with OpenGL at this point. You guys need to get that sorted. OpenGL's never going away. Those older games are some of the best games ever made and will be played far longer than games like Fortnite and Rainbow Six Siege. So those games will eventually die off and nobody will ever play them again. But people are always going to go back and play old Quake 3 engine games because they're some of the best games ever produced. So you need to get this sorted because this is never ever going to go away entirely. Since I was checking out what the new RDNA architecture could do, the next thing I decided to take a look at was Crysis 3. This is a game that, ironically enough, is an AMD sponsored title, but runs horribly on AMD hardware. So I went ahead and checked that out. This is running at 1080p, very high settings, and as you can see, the performance on this game is still terrible. This is the only game that did this. All the other games that I tested out a bunch of just random games to see what performance looked like, and this is really the only one that's this bad. For whatever reason, there's got to be something inside of this game engine that does not play well. So I'm not sure if this is an AMD issue, if this is a Crytek issue, but this game does not run well with AMD hardware and still does not. I wanted to check that out because this is a game and a game series that I go through every few years, and I was hoping that it would run better. You can tweak settings to get it to run okay, and it's not going to run as well as on an Nvidia card, but you can get it running to a playable state. Unfortunately, it's just not going to be out of the box right now. Okay, so the last little thing that I wanted to go over in this video that I did check out, so we're going to end this on a more positive note, is I went ahead and I checked out AMD's auto undervolting feature. So they actually have a feature inside of the Wattman utility. All you have to do is click a button and it'll auto undervolt your GPU. This allows the GPU to continue running at similar frequencies while using less power and generating less heat. So right off the bat, the RX 580 that I have pulls in about 150 watts according to MSI Afterburner. And the 5700 pulls in about 150 watts regularly as well. So efficiency-wise, basically the RX 5700 is about on par with my RX 580, which in and of itself is highly impressive. That's really good to see. But then you throw on this undervolt, and then we're getting about 15 watts less power draw. So just by clicking a button, power draw is reduced by about 10%, and game performance is identical. Clocks don't really change at all. This is a free and easy way to just keep your GPUs running cooler. An extra 10% lower power reduction, that helps out a lot. And that's going to lead to my last little thing. This is just kind of my final thought on the RX 5700. My initial thought, it does not run loud. I want to get that out of the way. I know a lot of the other guys out there have debunked this hot and loud nonsense. It runs 70 degrees or cooler, and it's barely audible. Even dual fan OEM AIB coolers, they make the same amount of noise. So I don't know what everybody was getting on about there. Perhaps the room was too warm. I don't know. I keep it about 75 degrees Fahrenheit in here. It's pretty normal, I would assume. But anyway, it doesn't get that hot, doesn't get that loud. The stock cooler is really heavy. It has a really premium feel to it. It was just like this brick. Like a brick of freaking metal in your hands, and I wasn't expecting that. It's a much better constructed cooler than I was originally anticipating. Now, I really do wish that the little logo on the side glowed. It is a little bland on the 5700 compared to the 5700 XT. But so far, this thing's going pretty good. In the next video, we're going to go over more of the numbers, the game benchmarks, more like a typical review type setup on that one. And then after that, I'm thinking about checking out either some GPC testing. Doesn't seem like that's going to be possible because I can't get the memory to go any lower. Or I'll mess around with the power play tables. But I'm having some issues with that as well since safe mode doesn't want to work, because the BIOS on this is a little finicky, but I'll mess around with that, see what I can do. But that's kind of the stuff that I'm working on. I'll get those videos to you guys as soon as I can. I wanted to get this one out because to me, it's really important to know that AMD is fixing a lot of the things that GCN just didn't do well. Now, it's not all fixed. As I showed you, there's still some things that they need to work on. Still certain games out there, for some reason, don't run well. They need to figure out what's going on with that. Now, granted, these are older games. Odds are they might just forget about them, but hopefully there's something that AMD can do to fix that. And then my biggest gripe is not being able to use Relive in OpenGL games, because if I want to record footage for an older game, it's a real pain in the ass, and that's the reason why I don't do it too much. Or if I do, they're usually going to be DirectX games because, well, it works in that. Well, alrighty, guys, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Are you big emulator fans? Is this good news for you guys? Is this something that you've been looking for, or do you think it doesn't matter? Let me know. I'm really kind of curious. And if you like this video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Please share with friends. That really does help me out. And please give Timo Tech a like. Go check out his channel. I put a link in the description below. He's the one who went ahead and sent me the RX 5700 for testing. So I want to give him a shout out for doing that. That's really awesome. And I've been having a lot of fun with this. And I should be done in a couple of days there, Timo. And that's all I have for today, guys. I will catch you guys in the next video.